This is Dr.R.Rajalakshmi, Assistant Professor of English from Lakshmi Ramaswamy College, Trichy. Today's topic of discussion is early 20th century English literature. 20th century is characterized by two distinct movements, modernist movement and postmodernist movement. But I'd like to focus on the evolving ideas and beliefs in modernist literature today. So, what is modernism? Combination of several minor movements like art for art's sake, aestheticism, surrealism, cubism, Dadaism, so on and so forth. Many such isms combined together and came to be called as modernism. T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound were considered to be the hybrids of European modernism, or shall I say, they were the precursors or pioneers of modernist movement. Behind every literary movement, there must be one great historical event. So behind this modernist movement, there is a great historical event called World War I. As you all know, World War I started in 1914 and ended in 1918. So this World War I was won by Western Force America. So at the beginning of the 20th century, the center of power had shifted from England to America. So America assumed leadership thereafter, and America came on the scene of world politics, not only in politics but also in business and also in literature. So literature is not a self-contained narrative, but obviously it is dependent upon the entire milieu. It may be social, political, cultural, philosophical or intellectual milieu of any age. So that forms the background for literature. Now let's discuss the predominant ideas in the early 20th century. One of the most predominant idea in the early 20th century was Oswald Spengler's theory of decline of the West. This idea, it was also reflected in T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, James Joyce's Ulysses and Portrait of the Artist as Hangman. Even Virginia Woolf and D.H. Lawrence novels also reflected the same idea. So all these writers are engaged with the problem of the decline of the West, and each writer, by his or her own way of writing, they offered solutions. They responded to it and offered solutions. And then literary forms changed. That is, you no longer have linear forms you had in the 19th century. Now there are dislocations like a wasteland. Dislocation in the sense not organic but inorganic. Broken pieces put together. It was like a patchwork. Similarly, James Joyce's Ulysses, it was a complete parody of Homer's Odyssey. Book by book, even chapter by chapter, you could notice there is a resemblance between these two. And then came John Barth's essay, The Literature of Exertion. It was published in 1967. The idea is all literary forms stand exhausted, beginning with epic writers, great novelists, poets, dramatists. All the great writers have already used the literary forms. So when you come to 20th century, writers were not able to think on their own. All they could do is they could write a parody or they can do a patchwork. So literary forms stand exhausted. That is one of the predominant idea. And then Freudian influence. So Sigmund Freud's influence on modernist writers is yet another influence. And his The Interpretation of Dreams, it was published in 1900, in the early 20th century. So Freud said that men's life is governed by things which are irrational, including your dreams, visions, hallucinations, obsessions, so on and so forth. Even writers like D.H. Lawrence and Virginia Woolf, they were highly relying upon non-rational experiences of life and they were trying to interpret life with the terms provided by Freud. And then came stream of consciousness technique. And this technique, it was first coined, or shall I say, introduced by William James. William James was a psychologist. In his first modern book of psychology, he introduced the term. Later on, the term was employed by Virginia Woolf in her novels like Mrs. Dalloway to the Lighthouse. And then came interior monologue. This technique was employed by James Joyce in his novels. As I already mentioned, behind every literary movement, there must be one great historical event. If you take neoclassical age, Industrial Revolution was at the back of neoclassical age. And if you take Romantic age, French Revolution was at the back of Romantic age. Likewise, behind this modernist movement, there lies two great historical events. One is World War I and the other is Russian Revolution. As far as World War I, I already mentioned decline of the West. As far as literature is concerned, I already mentioned decline of the West. So this World War One, it was a great shock to the Western world. So not only writers but people thought that humanism had failed in the early 20th century. And then Russian Revolution, one of the impact created by Russian Revolution was it divided the entire world into two blocks, Eastern Bloc and Western Bloc. Eastern Bloc known for European countries and Western Bloc known for Western countries. So during this revolution, many of the leading writers, they were drawn towards Marxist ideas. Perhaps this was a failure of capitalism. So this failure of capitalism was clearly indicated in Wall Street crisis, which occurred in 1929. So this Wall Street, it's a stock exchange in New York, and it was crashed in 1929. Because of that, millions of people went jobless and thousands of people died out of hunger. So this was the enough reason for the leading writers to be drawn towards Marxist ideas. Because of all these events, another significant thing happened in the society: isolation of artists from the society. Because earlier you do not find such isolation. If you take writers like Charles Dickens, Anthony Trollope, Thomas Murray, William Thackeray, they were living among the people and they were feeling the calls of time, and they were narrating stories. For example, if you take Charles Dickens stories were serialized in weekly magazine, and every week he will be flooded with lots of letters from his readers. So readers, they wanted Dickens to modify the content. So such kind of participation was there in the 19th century. But when you come to 20th century, there was no sharing of values and perspectives, and there was a complete isolation of artists from society. So because of this isolation and because of the idea that all the literary forms stand exhausted, writers took to experimentation. So large-scale experimentation was done in poetry, novel and drama. So T.S. Eliot's poem, The Wasteland, is one of the finest example for an experimentation. And H.G. Wells wrote science fiction, and as far as novels, as I said, H.G. Wells wrote science fiction, and Mary Shelley wrote horror novel like Frankenstein, and D.H. Lawrence, he did experiments in his narratives, and E. Cummings, he includes short letters in his novels. And as far as drama is concerned, American dramatists like Arthur Miller, Tennessee Williams wrote experimental drama. And British dramatists like H.G. Wells and G.B. Shaw, as they were conventionalists, they were focusing on social drama. So I would say that experimentation is one strong aspect of modernism. So experimentation was done not only in forms but also in language. So there was a sharp reaction against Victorian language, Victorian inhibitions, and of course Victorian morality. Because the topics talked by D.H. Lawrence in the 20th century, it was not possible earlier. During the Victorian age, certain things were inhibited. So things which were inhibited or things which were kept under the carpet were literally manifested by writers like D.H. Lawrence. So language became free, frank and innovative when you come to 20th century. And I would say that inventions and innovations became the hallmarks of modernist literature. And women liberation is one of the significant thing happened in the early 20th century. Women's rights were granted in 1920s, and women got franchise in 1922. In 1929, Virginia Woolf published her essay Room of One's Own, which symbolizes freedom. So in that essay, she demanded rights for women because she doesn't want to be defined in terms of some other guides. So what Virginia Woolf showed in her novels is not just psyche alone, but it's sex, gender, relationship, how men behave and how women got oppressed. So most of the Woolf's characters are true because of that kind of oppression. And for women liberation, not only women but also certain male writers also fought. If you take Chaucer, Chaucer created powerful female characters like Wife of Bath in Canterbury Tales, which challenges the traditional image of women. And if you take Shakespeare, Shakespeare has no heroes but only heroines who are morally, intellectually superior. So these are some of the ideas, evolving ideas and beliefs in the early 20th century.